Hey guys, welcome to Box Office Addict, my weekly live stream podcast where I break down the weekend numbers and have a free-form discussion with everybody in the chat. If this is your first Box Office Addict, I hope you enjoy it. Number 69, dude. So I'd appreciate if everyone in the chat didn't make 69 jokes all episode, but I'm assuming that's going to happen no matter what I do because you guys are savages. You're bastards. You princes of memes. You kings of the internet. So as always, I am here with my co-host and sidekick, Bathory, a bunch of regular viewers, and we have some really interesting things to talk about this weekend because some films are just continuing to exceed expectations, while other films are kind of hitting a weird middle ground. And there's not a lot going on right now in movies. It's not like there's a lot of films coming out right now that have insane hype at this particular point where we're at. But I made the film of the week Aquaman. Maybe I'll do something for 70. But I'm going to make the film of the week Aquaman, which should have been the last 2 or 3 weeks if I had been doing Box Office Addict. But I have to talk about Aquaman a little bit, in particular because Aquaman just passed $1 billion at the box office. It's the third DC film to do so after the Christopher Nolan Batman sequels. It's also one of only a few comic book films to ever do so, and for a standalone character, it's even more rare. I think the only standalone character who's ever passed $1 billion is Iron Man, Black Panther, Batman, and now Aquaman. If I'm missing anybody, let me know, but I don't think a solo superhero character has passed $1 billion at the box office. So the Batman 69, that's great. So this is actually a pretty rare thing, and I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. It's not that people thought Aquaman was going to be a bomb by any means, but I don't know if anyone thought that, oh, it was going to be in that rarefied air, and it was going to pass the majority of the standalone MCU films. I think at best people may have thought that it might do as well as, let's say, a Thor Ragnarok, but because of the huge international box office, it's now surpassed even that. Spider-Man Homecoming, the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. So, I mean, yeah, Aquaman deserves to be discussed a little bit more. Hey, Blood Money's here. Awesome. The talk to fish jokes can finally end. I don't think those jokes are ever going to end, unfortunately. I think they're going to continue making stupid jokes like that in media. When Aquaman does a better movie with Batman and Superman. Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? How did Aquaman perform better than films that featured so many famous characters? It just shows that the Avengers wasn't such a big hit, the original Avengers, because they mixed the characters together, which is, I think, what a lot of us thought when it came out originally, and I can totally see why. You think, well, duh, like it's because Iron Man and the Hulk are and Thor are together. But I guess it's at a point where you have to kind of accept that it was the movie itself as a crowd pleaser and the setup that led to that success. You can't really say it's just characters being famous. There was a video I saw from a YouTuber recently. I can't remember his name, but he's a good YouTuber. He's got like 500,000 subscribers, where he was discussing how public perception of these characters is set by the movies that come out in the media, be it cartoon shows or what's happening, because most people just don't read comic books. So the MCU is sticking to a lot of different comic book storylines and presenting these characters in ways that are connecting with people because it's what's so likable about them in the comics, where DC's been suffering for years for the fact that they're presenting Superman as boring. They're presenting the Flash as very generic and poorly written, a very jokey character that doesn't work. So now that characters are getting their own standalone movie, and also this just might be evidence of time, that maybe Man of Steel came out a little too early. Batman v Superman was premature. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, he had, that was a very good video, I thought, because I think his premise in that video, at least, was the right premise, is that the public is very mixed on Superman right now. He's not that popular because of the movies that have come out over the last 15, 20 years. And the public's perception to a lot of characters is very skewed right now. I think it also doesn't help that Henry Cavill's performance and his casting and the way it was directed just didn't make the public fall in love with Superman. The fact that Zack Snyder couldn't get the public to stay in love with Batman, though, is really insane, because Batman was at the peak of popularity right before Batman v Superman came out. So it's one thing that's, you could always say Zack Snyder doesn't understand these characters, which was obvious. I don't ever think that was a debate, really. People who tried to defend Zack Snyder's poor storytelling acumen, because he really understands the subtext, and he wants to make these characters more grounded and dark, and he has these geopolitical themes that he's exploring and all that. It's like, well, that's just not, you're giving this complexity to Zack Snyder that's not really there. As a person, he's not a very complex, interesting person in interviews, and the best parts of any of his films, excluding Dawn of the Dead, even though that's a James Gunn screenplay, really came from other people. All the stuff in Watchmen that I think really works is pretty much from the comic. All the stuff in 300 that I think is entertaining is from the comic, and everything that I love about his Dawn of the Dead remake, you know, outside of some really nice camera work and all that and performances, I think comes from a very well done screenplay. When he's left to his own devices and his own writing team, I think the results speak for themselves, that he can't have a success critically or financially. If the films had been critically acclaimed and the audience didn't respond to them, then you might have an argument to be made. Or if the films were huge hits and they didn't get the best reviews, sort of like Aquaman, then you could go, all right, well, people love them. But I do think Snyder wanted to do that. I agree with you. I just don't think, yeah, I don't think he has the ability as a storyteller. I always have to make that clear to people, that I don't think Zack Snyder is necessarily a bad filmmaker, a bad craftsman. I don't think he's terrible at putting a movie together. His biggest flaw is that I think he doesn't know how to combine all these elements well together unless he has somebody's material to really pull from. And that's the problem. Is I think the arrogance came from them assuming that because the Batman films had done so well, being more gritty, that if you took that approach with Superman, it would be a juxtaposition to what was going on in Marvel with their lighter tone at the time, and I just don't think it paid off the way they thought it would. That was ultimately the miscalculation, and the fact that he doubled down on it with Batman v Superman, that he didn't pull back with that movie and say, okay, well, we have a chance here to kind of make a more entertaining film. No, he went even further with it. I think the Watchmen film's final reception will hinge on how the show does. It may be looked upon the more fondness, or people will look at it as a weakness more. It depends. I know some people make the argument that Watchmen's like going to be the Blade Runner of its time, and people are going to love it 20 years from now, but I've heard that argument for so many movies. Where people go, oh, it's going to be like Blade Runner, Empire Strikes Back, or Raging Bull. And it's like, well, you can't just assume that because you like the movie. You know, you can't just say, well, in 20 years, everyone will love it. You don't know. Maybe everyone will hate it even more. I don't think Watchmen's reputation has grown in the last decade. If anything, I think most people have forgotten about it. And most people have moved on. You know, yeah, the montages of Zack Snyder trying to explain his films is really fucking... it's cringe. It should be funny, but watching it makes you just feel uncomfortable. And it's weird to think when I was a teenager I was a Zack Snyder fan, because I remember Dawn of the Dead was like the shit. It's like, oh wow, you pulled off a Romero remake, and then you give it a few years later, and you know 300 came out and it was entertaining. I don't know about the Watchmen series. I mean, here's the funny thing. I disagree. I don't think Watchmen's developed more of a following since the 10 years. I completely disagree with you. I think Watchmen is as popular, if not less so, than it was when it came out. I don't think it's grown in any reception over time. Any kind of cult following or popularity it has is just people being fans of the comic book and awareness of the movie, and maybe people discussing it in YouTube videos. But if I've looked up the Blu-ray sales and stuff like that, it's not like Watchmen sales have jumped to some high level since the movie came out. The movie still has lost money for the studio over the years, and it's certainly not tossed around a lot. I mean, there's been so many superhero films since Watchmen come out that have done so much better critically and financially. I think Watchmen's just kind of like seen as, well, that was sort of a failure that came out at this time. I don't think it's developed much more of a following. I mean, it's developed a following in the same sense every movie does after it's been out for 10 years, that more people find it on home video. But I don't think it's substantial. I don't think it's a substantial growth. I still think Watchmen overall was a failure for the studio in putting money into it. And And I don't even hate Watchmen. I'm not saying that as a hater, like that I dislike Watchmen. I think Watchmen has a lot of good elements to it. Like that's honestly one thing I gotta say. I don't hate Zack Snyder's Watchmen, but I still don't think it's a very popular movie, and I don't think it ever will be, really. And it's weird. It's a weird one to discuss because everyone talked about it to death back when it came out in '09, and now it's really not worth discussing. Did it do over 100 million on home video? Well, they'd still be in the black though, because the budget was 100 and what was it, like 150 million, and then you got to include marketing. So they probably had like $200 million in Watchmen, so they probably still didn't. I mean, they might be closer to breaking even at this point. But is Watchmen selling well on home video now? Or was that initial sales when it came out in like 2009 and 10 and all that, and the director's cut and all that came out? Because not many movies do that. Home video is really a dying market. Yeah, I don't know how much. I mean, appreciation, what does that mean? You know, that doesn't mean people are right. I think if people like Watchmen more in 20 years, that doesn't make it a better movie. For all we know, it'll become a meme in 20 years. Because you made a good point about the television show. What if the TV show comes out and it's fucking great? How does that going to affect the movie? We don't know yet because we haven't seen the show. Because here's the weird thing. This shows you how people's minds work, how they flip on a dime. Back when, if you go to the numbers, it shows the box office numbers, but that doesn't include digital sales and TV rights. I mean, I'm sure it's broke even, but I mean, like most movies break even. But are we really going to call Watchmen a success, is what I'm saying? I still don't think Watchmen's a successful movie. And I'm not talking about quality. If you think it's a successful film in the sense you enjoyed it, that's fine. But I still don't think like it's become a very popular movie in general. I think there's been, like, if we're just talking in general, I would say, for instance, I would say Thor Ragnarok's a much more popular movie than that. I would, you know, or even Spider-Man Homecoming, you know, and those are films that I don't even think are as interesting as things going on in Watchmen. But Logan, I would say, is a much more popular film, Deadpool, than Watchmen. I don't think it's anywhere near the top of popularity. But here's the thing. That's really weird, that really gives you a sign of how people are. I remember when back when Terry Gilliam wanted to do Watchmen, and he said, let me get my display picture going on here. He said that the only way to do it would be do it as a miniseries, as a television show. And that was the big discussion at the time. Is that everybody said Watchmen should be a television show. Nobody thought it could work as a movie, which I think is a good argument, honestly, because a lot of the qualities of Watchmen is almost this soap opera, episodic way it's sort of told over the issues, that if it was done with hour-long, you know, episodes of a television show, or if you even expanded on things, it might work a little better cinematically. Also, there's always been a discussion amongst comic book fans how good Watchmen actually is, if it's overrated. I've certainly had that conversation for a long time. But everybody always said Watchmen should be a television series, and almost everyone used to say universally HBO. That was always the discussion, right? So then we never got that. Zack Snyder's Watchmen comes out, and we can say the reception's divided. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people think it's mediocre. Like me, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's got good scenes and bad scenes. I think it's a flawed movie that's entertaining, but not a great movie. My job's going well. Yeah, I got a promotion. Let's see, like a month ago? Maybe a month ago, maybe 3 weeks. I got another promotion. I got another raise. I was working like 60 plus hours a week though, which really got fucking annoying. Yeah, I've heard of, yeah. I mean, I like the idea of Fred Savage and Deadpool hanging out. I wish that just had been its own little, like, YouTube thing. That's a fun idea. So now that we're actually getting a Watchmen television series, years after time has passed, and we're getting it on HBO, which is what everybody really wanted. People see, that's a weird thing for me. I know I'm all over the place. That was a weird thing for me with Watchmen, as I thought it would grow with me, because when I saw it in the theater, I liked it quite a bit, and then I watched it again at home, and I found it to be very slow. And then I tried to watch it again, and now I can't even really sit through it anymore. I'm definitely stressed out a lot. I'm making good money. Yes. I had to buy a car recently, which kicked me in the balls. Got a new car, but I am making good money at my job, and it seems like I'm on a good career path, even though I really don't want to be doing the job I was doing. I was there the other day thinking to myself, like, do I want to fucking do this when I could be making YouTube videos or something, or writing screenplays, and doing things I want to do? You know, I don't know. I'm in a weird place in my life right now where I'm not really sure what to do. But so we're finally getting an HBO show. Then what does everybody do when they hear about it? Oh, Damon fucking Lindelof. This show's gonna suck. Bad idea. I don't want it. So we went from everybody saying it needs to be an HBO show. Now we have everybody saying it's gonna suck because of Damon Lindelof. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not defending Damon Lindelof. Lost is one of those other things where there's a lot of great qualities about it and a lot of bad things about it, and it's divisive now. Back when Lost was on, originally everybody seemed to love it for a while, but now Lost's reputation has kind of been hurt as the years have gone on. I think Lost is definitely a good example of something that hasn't continued in its popularity in the zeitgeist like it was when it was originally on. And the ending has a lot to do with that. Really, the last couple seasons of Lost have a lot to do with that. But, and, you know, his writing on the Star Trek films, and pretty much every screenplay he's ever worked on, Prometheus, they're all shit. So I get that. But if you watched the show The Leftovers, I thought it was a very good show. I thought artistically, I thought dramatically, visually, I thought it was a very interesting show. It was very critically acclaimed, and in some ways, many people consider it a gem of television over the last decade. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Now, I don't agree with people. Well, that's true to a point, but The Leftovers also was based off source material, and he did have co-writers helping him with that show, in particular, the one guy. So I don't know how much credit I want to give him for The Leftovers either, because he didn't just write Prometheus, and I agree with you, it wasn't totally his fault. Star Trek Into Darkness, he collaborated on that horrible screenplay in the third act. Cowboys and Aliens, he worked on that screenplay. Tomorrowland, those are all really flawed screenplays. He does have a bad track record, I think. I get why people are skeptical. I think people are being too skeptical, and ignoring The Leftovers is good. But I can agree with people that Damon Lindelof has flaws as a writer. I mean, I'm not going to act like the guy is... like, he's not flawless. He's not infallible. He's made mistakes. To the degree of those mistakes being his own and influenced by others, who knows? Yes, we're talking about the HBO Watchmen, which we just saw some footage of, actually, recently, in an HBO promo for their shows coming out of 2019, and we saw a few seconds of Watchmen. So, I don't know. I think I'm very open-minded to the Watchmen television series. I think it could be very good. Damon Lindelof wouldn't be my first pick. Yeah, but I would argue to you the entertainment value is more J.J. Abrams' direction and the cast than Lindelof's screenplay. The screenplay is the biggest flaw with that movie, I feel. And I put a lot of that on Lindelof and Abrams writing it. But a lot of that works about Into Darkness is that it's an entertaining action blockbuster. That it's got a lot of good set pieces. And that's more to do with Abrams as a director, I feel. That's all I thought the whole time I saw Star Trek Into Darkness. We're like, well, this is a really pretty, fun, fast-paced action movie, but this is a shit screenplay. You know, and I don't think the first Star Trek's really that far from that either. I think Abrams is just a very entertaining... He knows how to make that kind of movie, like a crowd pleaser. Which is why I think The Force Awakens reception was so much more positive than The Last Jedi, because I think J.J. Abrams is very good at making a crowd pleaser. Damon Lindelof, on the other hand, you know, I think people underrate the stuff he did on Lost that was great. I think they just look at how it ended and how a lot of things didn't pay off, and they were clearly bullshitting it. And honestly, the show just kind of drops in quality in the last season. The island feels smaller. A lot of the mystery goes away. There's still great episodes, but people forget that there's a lot of great stuff Yes, they worked on both screenplays. Damon Lindelof, though, was very involved with the writing of Into Darkness. He did uncredited work on the first film, but he was more involved with the Into Darkness screenplay. But, you know, once again, we still got to bring up Hero, Cowboys, and Aliens and Tomorrowland, and I don't think those are very good screenplays either. Yeah, no, Into Darkness does have that issue where the first act's pretty good. And then as it goes on, you're like, oh, you kind of dropped the ball. Like, if Into Darkness had a great third act... I just started working out again recently. Those are very good numbers, though. Holy shit. Like, seriously. Like, a 200-pound bicep curl, that's insane. Like, really. But I just started out recently. I just rejoined a gym about a month ago because I've had that, a pelvic injury for quite a while. And it stopped me from working out. When I was working out intensely, I was, you know, everything was compound movements. I was strength training. I was doing bench presses and deadlifts and squats. But I had to stop after a couple injuries. My back kept going out. But I'm getting back into workout. I'm getting very slow into it. I never stopped doing pull-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. I never stopped doing body weight workouts. But now I'm getting back into cable workouts and some light machine stuff to try to fix some of the areas that I need fixed to get myself a little bit more stable. And then I want to go back into the weightlifting and lifting heavy again and getting my my stabilizers worked out. But right now I'm going to have to take it slow. People don't know this about machines. Machines were actually created originally for people with injuries. But the problem is when you go to the gym a lot of the time and you see people working on machines, it's a lot of new people who, you know, they just think they can go work out on a machine and then get big. And you may, with hypertrophy, may be able to get some big results. But it's really not the proper way to work out, I feel. It's a nice way to trick somebody into thinking they're doing more than they are. And those machines put you in awkward positions. But originally, machines were made for people who had injuries like me, who need to go work on some specific muscle groups to get themselves, do some rehab. And then you should go back to weights. But I see a lot of people there that are just doing machines. I'm just doing stuff for some rehab. Then I'm going to go back to the classic deadlift, bench press, you know, all that. Rows, everything. I mean, it could be. We don't know. You know, I really don't. I don't know how Watchmen's going to turn out. But people, like I said, people underrate that a lot of episodes of Lost that he worked on are still great episodes of television. Now, don't get me wrong, Paul Dini worked on that show. Drew Goddard worked on that show. There was a lot of talented people that co-wrote on that show that I think worked on some of the best episodes. But people act like Damon Lindelof has no talent. I don't agree with. But I totally get why people are skeptical of Watchmen just in a sense that it could suck. Just like anything can suck. But, you know... No, I disagree. I actually think machines can cause injuries. Because the machines put you in awkward positions, and the machine puts you in these awkward movies. Well, you know me, Will. I've been the biggest critic of Ridley Scott. I don't think Ridley Scott gets enough criticism for everything. I think Ridley Scott deserves much more criticism in general, not just for Prometheus, but his entire fucking career. I'm on the record for saying Ridley Scott's easily one of the most overrated directors. And he's made much more bad films than he has good. And people just seem to overlook. And I think he's made some of the most overrated films of all time. In particular, Gladiator, which I think is a very bad movie. I don't totally agree. I think machines don't necessarily prevent injuries depending on what you're doing, because if the machine, it depends on the machine too. But if the machine's doing a lot of the movements for you, and putting you in these awkward positions, I mean, it's a lot of isolation workouts. But the problem with it is that if you're not stabilizing that weight like you have to do with the bench press, you're really getting spaghetti noodles, you know, of muscle. You may have it may look good. But in particular with a lot of machines, what ends up happening is you're not actually as strong as you think you are. The weight on the machine is not accurate to what really weight would be if you were using a barbell. So, and I mean, I think machines are safe for some things, and I think machines are better in some ways. I don't know why anybody would do flies with dumbbells and not do it on a cable machine, Why would you do dumbbell chest flies? I think that's stupid. I think the movement's terrible. But other kind of workouts, I think, on a machine are just idiotic, and you're putting yourself in a very awkward position, and you have to be careful. But any kind of weight or resistance, you can get an injury. Any kind of... I'm not anti-machine. I'm not anti-machine. It's just, there, you know, the science is pretty clear, the difference between the two, and you have to understand the difference. I think a proper workout would incorporate both. I think that you should still squat free weights. I still think you should bench press free weights. I still think that you should deadlift. Now, do I think that you have to bicep curl dumbbells? No, I think you can do cables. And resistance band? Do I think you have to do triceps with weights? No. Do I think you have to do you know, 4 workouts one way or the other? No, I think there's variations. Like I said, if you want to go do a bench press and then you want to go do flies on a cable machine, I think that's really good. I think that's a great way to incorporate the two together. But I think any program that leaves the other one out is a flawed program, because you're going to hit a plateau with the free weights, and then you're going to get to dangerous territory where you're lifting very heavy to try to make gains. Or with the weight machines, you're going to beat the weight on the machine, and then you have to figure out different ways to work with the machine. That's why you see a lot of guys doing one leg on a machine with the weight, so they're lifting all the weight with one leg. But I don't like Planet Fitness at all, especially because their weights don't go up high enough, in my opinion. But I'm not like some anti-machine guy. I just think I think people lean on machines a little bit too much because they're ultimately easier than doing free weights, and they put less stress on your body at the end of the day. But they are easier to do drop sets on. I think if you lean on machines and you're wondering why you're not getting mass sometimes, that's the issue. And I think if you're doing free weight sometimes and you're like, well, why don't I have certain areas of my body that look more like what I want to look like a bodybuilder? I think it's because you don't know how to incorporate other things in your workout to get the kind of V shape you might be looking for. But yeah, machines feel great. I'm not gonna act like they don't feel great. I love doing lat pull downs on a machine. I don't know why the fuck we're talking about working out so much on a box office show. But I'm excited. I'm excited for Watchmen. I hope it's good. I would like another good HBO show. Westworld's been a massive disappointment for me. Game of Thrones has turned to shit. So they really don't have any... Leftovers ended. They really don't have anything for me. So my hope is that Watchmen's really good. We can actually get a good HBO show again. It would be nice to have a new show to be hyped about from HBO. Because I'm an HBO fanboy, but I've been let down with several projects. Vinyl? Holy shit, what a waste of time that was. Like, seriously. Of course I'm a fan of Stuart Gordon. I'm not just a fan of his films, I'm a fan of him as a person, his theater work. Of course, From Beyond is one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah, I love Stuart Gordon. I'm devastated by the reviews of Glass, quite frankly. I can be very honest here. I'm devastated. I thought Glass looked terrific. You know, I thought Glass looked amazing. I loved Unbreakable. It's my favorite superhero film. And then I loved most of Split. And I was very excited. I thought this was going to be M. Night Shyamalan's crowning achievement to make this third film and bring it all back. But after reading the reviews, it's like, well, fuck's up. I mean, it sounds like Lady in the Water all over again or something like that. I mean, it doesn't sound as cringe, but it sounds like all of the problems he had with his worst work. I was hoping Glass was going to be one of the great superhero films, and it's... I'm not saying I'm going to blindly agree with the critics, but I don't like what I'm reading. And it's upsetting because I thought the trailers were great. I thought it had a great premise. I'm disappointed. I was very excited for Glass. I'm still gonna see it, but it's upsetting. My hype has certainly taken a hit from it. Oh, From Beyond's fucking incredible. I can't believe it exists, to be honest. It didn't bomb, but I've heard it's pretty bad. I've heard Glass is pretty bad. And you know, I dug deep, and the reviews make some valid points that were things I was worried about in the back of my head that M. Night Shyamalan would do, but I just thought he would be smart enough not to make those mistakes after making those kind of mistakes before. I guess he can't help himself. He couldn't resist. I have no interest in True Detective Season 3, honestly. I never want to watch anything again that has writing from Nick Pizzolatto or Nick Papa John's, whatever the fuck his name is. Fuck that guy. Season 2 of True Detective is one of the worst things I've ever seen. I love the first season of True Detective. But yeah, no, I don't want to watch anything that guy's worked on, ever. I really just don't give a fuck. I'm not going to sit there and watch True Detective season. Even if it's good, I have no interest in watching it. I'm over it. Yeah, no, From Beyond definitely has some of the best practical effects you'll ever see in a movie. Like, I think it's, like, top tier. Like, I think it's up there with The Thing. I mean, to me, it's like a top 5 sort of thing, body horror. You know, Stuart Gordon is in many ways a very Frank Henenlotter-esque, but in a different place philosophically and comedically. But you know, that sort of movie, which we don't get a lot of anymore, it's unfortunately kind of stuck in the 80s. I think From Beyond is very much a peak of that. What anime or manga could HBO adapt as a good show or end a show that you would get hyped for on HBO? The only movies that I have ready to review are Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. And I need to record the audio for those, but I have to go get the license plate for my new car and all this shit, so I don't know when I'm going to get them out, but I want to do a review of Spider-Man and I want to do a review of Roma and get those out before the end of the month is my goal. Outside of that, I really haven't seen anything, to answer your question. Because I work all the fucking time. And winter has hit. I had to drive home in a bad snowstorm the other day. Winter really, it's a late winter. We didn't get winter till January. No snow in December, but it's hit now and it fucking sucks. And you really don't want to go out. Mark Millar, I mean, at this point, I'd call him a hack. Quite frankly. And I think a lot of his books are overrated. I like most of Kick-Ass. And I like the majority of, God, what the fuck, Wanted, the comic. I'm talking about the comics. And I like some of the Fantastic Four stuff. I like parts of Superman Red Son. But yeah, I mean, for years, I think he's been just writing horrible comic books. And he's one of the biggest sellouts, I mean, in modern comics history. So I'm not really a fan. Plus, I hate his fucking politics. I think he's a piece of shit when it comes to that stuff. His view of America, I think, is disgusting. Not a fan. But I do like some of the adaptations of his movie. I mean, I really like the Kick-Ass movie. You know, I like Kingsman. You know, I like stuff that he's worked on with Matthew Vaughn. So I'm not like a hater of his work, but I don't like him. Not at all. I'm trying to think of an anime that I think would make a good HBO series. I really can't think of one off the top of my head. I can't think of something that's like that should be. I mean, is anything that I would like to see as an anime series adapted? It would cost too much money. Like, would I like to see a Mobile Suit Gundam show? Yeah, but is HBO going to spend like $200 million to make a Gundam series? I mean, I don't think so. You know, and most of the stuff that I would like, that I think they could do, I don't know if it would translate well, like Tenchi Muyo. I don't think that kind of stuff would translate well. Berserk wouldn't, I don't think that stuff would translate well into life. I think it would just be too hard to pull off. Maybe you could do something with like Yu Hakusho, where you keep it smaller, where this kid dies in the first season's him being a ghost. And then he slowly becomes the spirit detective, and he has to go hunt down demons, and has the spirit gun. I think Yu Hakusho could be turned into a television series if you really scaled it down. But that's one that comes to my head. Yu Hakusho, I think, could work, and Yu Hakusho is probably my favorite shonen of all time, and I think Yusuke Urameshi is like the best protagonist of a shonen. I don't know how Elite is going to do. I don't have a lot of faith in it doing that well, even if it's a good movie. I just don't know how much interest there is in it, to be quite frank. I think Saga could definitely be adapted into a TV show. Yeah, I think it's structured very much like a television show. It's like Game of Thrones. Even though I think Saga's pretty much sucked since like issue 23. But those first 18 issues of Saga are great. They're really great. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Brian K. Vaughan fan. Why the Last Man's fucking terrific. But at this point, yeah, I'd rather just see Why the Last Man, which I think they are making. So, yeah, I mean, Saga's already there, and yeah, Saga just, it's one of the biggest disappointments I've had in modern comics, where I was so into it, and then the further it's gone on, I think it's just gotten worse. It's actually very similar to Game of Thrones. Hey, I hope Elite is good. I hope those reviews are true. I don't want Elite to be a bad movie. I assume that it's going to be a decent enough film just because the source material is good. James Cameron worked on this film for years and did a lot of the pre-production. I don't think it's going to be a disaster. It may not be a masterpiece, but I don't... Yeah, Yu Hakusho's great, Bathory. It's like Dragon Ball Z if it was tighter and had better character development. Because that's always been my issue with Dragon Ball Z Toriyama. Can we just spend some time with these fucking characters? Because they are interesting. I want to hang out with Vegeta. I want to hang out with these with Piccolo. They're good characters, but he got so caught up in that. And it's not even his fault, it's just the popularity. He got so caught up in the long talking before a battle and then the battle payoffs and everything like that. I think Dragon Ball Z would have benefited so much more just from drama and character interactions, because I think the characters are interesting. Yu Hakusho actually does spend the time fleshing out characters and their stories, and also has the fight scenes. And the fight scenes have more dramatic weight to them in the filler parts, if you want to call them that. Yeah, I think the marketing for Elite has been absolutely terrible. Yeah, yeah, D&D, holy shit, what a pair of hacks they are. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, that's the thing. Dragon Ball Z, great moments, great characters, but yeah, just the whole pacing of it and everything, I can't get over it. I think Yu Hakusho does all of that so much better. No, I'm not talking about Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball's the shit. Dragon Ball's awesome. And I'm an Akira Toriyama fan. Let me make that very fucking clear. I like me some Toriyama. But, yeah, I can't go back and rewatch DBZ anymore. I'll watch Kai, maybe, because it's trimmed up, but yeah, Yu Hakusho, I mean, you couldn't call it that. You couldn't do any of that stuff. You couldn't have a lead character named Yusuke Urameshi, but you could call it, like, Spirit Detective. You could call the show Spirit Detective and just keep the premise of him dying and then going to the afterlife and then getting this job as the Spirit Detective, and make it more of a detective show where he has to go find these people, track them down, more like the early episodes. I think you could get a few good seasons out of that, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know if you could do any of the Dark Tournament stuff and all that, though. No, basically they ran out of the source material, and D&D just started writing a lot of original material, and it turns out they're not very good writers, and they were very bad with time management on the production. Oh yeah, DBZ's insane with Power Life. Basically, Game of Thrones, just the dialogue gets bad, the acting starts to drop, there's so much less plot twist, it becomes more cliche and predictable, it becomes more of a generic fantasy show. It doesn't subvert your expectations like it used to do. And it just, in general, becomes less sophisticated. It has spectacle and great fight scenes, and some great directors come in and do some really impressive stuff visually. Like, from a special effects standpoint, Game of Thrones looks as good as it ever has. It looks better. Like Hard Home, that stuff's impressive. But what used to make Game of Thrones good in the first 3 seasons was the politics and the subterfuge and the performances. And it just, none of that's there anymore. There's so much Kit Harington now. There's so much Emil Clark, and they're fucking horrible. And it's unfortunate. And yeah, and they just do these time jumps now, where a character will go from one spot in the map to another area within, it feels like, seconds. And what made Game of Thrones used to be great is that people used to have to travel, and it used to take a whole season to get somewhere, which made everything feel earned. And it gave you time to have a lot of conversations with that people have conversations. Now, I mean, I did this all in my Game of Thrones Season 7 review, but basically now Game of Thrones is it cheats. It just jumps like, hey, she's on a dragon, now she's in this area and everyone's there. And it's like, well, how the fuck did that happen? That should have taken like a few days. So it's unfortunate. And also, they just got to the worst books. I mean, you know, the first 3 books are the good ones. And, you know, now they're in, you know, unknown territory. They also just started to favor actors and characters and give them more to do. And they forgot that they actually had these other interesting characters like Stannis. And they put them to the side. Yeah, they ruined Varys. And they were all great characters. And they're just not interesting anymore. Littlefinger. That used to be really interesting characters. It's clear D&D didn't understand that those characters are kind of what were the backbone of the show. They just went for fanboy pleasing. I mean, it really feels like a show written by some fan on Reddit now, and not what it used to feel like, which was one of the upper level HBO shows. It used to feel like a really quality show. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they forgot that Game of Thrones was driven by conversations and scheming and all that. I don't know how they lost sight of that. And characters dying you don't expect to die. It seems like everyone has plot armor now. And even if they kill people off in the last season, it's not going to improve those seasons before where Jon Snow's just surviving everything, Jaime Lannister surviving everything. It's like, okay, he would have fucking died there. You know, it starts to piss you off. There's no cause and effect anymore, which is why Game of Thrones used to be so entertaining from week to week, was the cause and effect. Something had a setup and it had a great payoff. Logical things happened. People suffered for making bad decisions. And the show doesn't work that way anymore. There's the heroes and there's the bad guys. And they're very clearly defined. And it really hurts the show now. It's upsetting too, because I was as big of a Game of Thrones fan as you could be. Would the marketing for Elite have been much better had it been distributed and marketed by Disney instead, or directed by James Cameron? I definitely think it would have helped the marketing if James Cameron had directed it. Yes. Do I think Disney's better at marketing than most studios? Yes. You know. The question is, though, how much appeal is there to Alita to a mainstream audience? It's very much an anime sort of thing. It's very much a nerd sort of thing. The things that are likable. Well, you know, but there is logic to the way, you know, George R. R. Martin did dragons. I mean, even if, you know, dragons never existed, you know, like the fact that he didn't want them to be flying creatures in the traditional dragon sense where they have the 4 legs and the wings. He's like, no, that's not how flying and like that's not how birds are. That's not how bats are. He said, my dragons aren't going to be that way. So there's still just a more believability to it than there used to be. And the dragons weren't just OP. They felt as real as dragons have ever felt in any kind of visual medium. And now the dragons can just magically fly anywhere in seconds, and their power levels jump all over the place. You know, I think about when we first see the dragons when they're babies at the end of season 1 and how powerful that was. And how subtle it was. And that was the kind of the key to Game of Thrones, because it made everything feel bigger, that things were ultimately pretty small. But now that we get the bigger, the things that we thought we wanted, and D&D became obsessed with that, they lost kind of the key ingredient to the recipe. Yeah, she is just a bad actress. I agree. And Kit Harington's only good when he's playing off other people. He's decent at reactions. He's not a very good actor. And they're the whole show now. And I even think Peter Dinklage has been phoning it in for two or three seasons as Tyrion. I haven't been impressed with his acting. I think Lena Headey is the only one actually giving a shit anymore. And the guy who plays Jaime Lannister. They're the only two I think actually are really trying. Arya Stark's become a horrible character, and she used to be one of my favorite. The Bravo stuff, holy shit. The Dorn, I mean, yeah, D&D just fucked up so many major things. I've never seen her be good. I don't think she's a good actress. I mean, I've never seen anything to show her be a very good actress. She seems to use the same facial expression all the time. I don't think she's ever been good on Game of Thrones. I think she had better writing at some points. I always think she's been a really bad actress. She's pretty. But I still have yet to see Emilia Clarke be good in anything. She's never, like, been like, wow, that's a really good performance there. I don't think so. Yeah, that was how Game of Thrones felt in the first season. The first 2 or 3 seasons. It was like, man, something's really going to happen here. Yeah, no, the guy who plays Bronn's great. And the guy who plays the Hound, they're always great. They can't deliver a line poorly. But unfortunately, yeah, the people that have survived the show are some of the worst actors. You know? There used to be these actors with such charisma. You know, I mean, the villains, too. They were just so likable. And now none of the lead characters are really that well performed anymore, and it's unfortunate. Except for, you know, like Hound and Bronn. I agree with you guys on that. And I think, you know, overall it's still a very well produced show. It's a good looking show. It does have CGI and spectacle and action that is likable. I agree with that. But you know, that's not enough to make something good. That just makes it a special effects demo reel, if you will. And that's not how Game of Thrones got popular. And if D&D thinks that's why it was popular, they never understood why it became popular and why it was really tapped into the zeitgeist. Yeah, Zack Snyder's Berserk. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the Hound's amazing. I think he's been consistently well performed throughout the whole show. I don't know if anyone's ever delivered cunt as well as he has. Dude's great. I completely agree. The more of him on the show, the better. Honestly. Like, dude's a really good actor. Let's get to the box office, though, because I've just been ranting here for like 50 minutes and haven't covered anything. The problem is I covered so many of these movies last weekend, and there just isn't nothing. There's not much new to talk about. A Star is Born continues to be a hit at the box office, although it's having a disappointing run in the award season. It's not. This seemed like the front runner for Best Picture and Best Director a couple months ago. $404 million worldwide, $203 million domestic. You also have to think the hit song Shallows, which has become a big radio hit. And this will get Oscar noms. So this is just a very successful movie. The Favorite is doing okay. I don't think it's doing as well as maybe they thought it would. But he's just not a very mainstream filmmaker. Second Act by J-Lo continues to be a mediocre performer at the box office. Peter Farrelly's Green Book, which is getting a lot of traction at the award ceremonies, has made $38 million domestic on a $23 million budget. They might be waiting to push this one once we get closer to the Oscars. Ralph Breaks the Internet has made $190 million domestic, putting it ahead of the first film, but just slightly. It's at $435 million worldwide. It still hasn't reached the box office of the first film, although the budget's the same. I still think this is a disappointment, though. I still think Disney thought this was going to make more money. If Beale Street Could Talk from Barry Jenkins, $7.6 million. I don't know the budget of this film. This is his follow-up to Moonlight, a film I find to be incredibly overrated. Replicas. I guess this is a Blade Runner spinoff. Keanu Reeves. Holy shit. Alice Eve. Eve Reeves. Is there something there? 2.5 million in 2,200 theaters. Why the fuck did they release that wide? Bohemian Rhapsody continues to be just one of the biggest successes of the last few years, with a $52 million budget from Bryan Singer, $3.2 million this weekend, $772 million worldwide. I said last weekend I didn't think this would reach $800 million. Now I'm saying that I'm a fucking idiot because it seems like it's just a foregone conclusion it's going to reach $800 million. It will pass $200 million domestic, and I think it made $15 million this weekend. It's just a huge hit in Japan. So I think it has enough traction. If it doesn't reach 800 million, it would be like 790 something million. So it's basically making 800 million. With that budget, even with back end going to the bandmates of Queen and all that, this is still going to be a huge profit for Fox. I don't see how they don't make $300, $400 million off of this movie. The arguments right now is Rami Malek going to be an A-lister now? Because despite Mr. Robot being a very critically acclaimed show, if you actually look at the ratings for Mr. Robot are bad. They've been bad ever since season 2. It doesn't even bring in 1 million viewers per episode. Now, that doesn't count people watching it on Amazon and DVD sales, but really, Mr. Robot's not that popular. It's kind of this underseen show that a lot of TV buffs out there really are a fan of. But now people are saying, oh, he's an A-lister, he's in the mainstream. I would disagree with that. I think that this movie did well because of Queen and Freddie Mercury. That doesn't mean his performance is bad, and I think he's the front runner to win the Oscar. But I think that this movie was more sold on that than Rami Malek, and I don't know what he could do. What, is he going to become an action star? Is he going to star in rom-coms? This is a very specific role. I mean, look at Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx was Ray. That was a huge deal. Jamie Foxx's career hasn't been all great. You know, he had Django and a couple other movies, but he's been in a lot of failures. Joaquin Phoenix, you know, just because this film's such a hit, I don't think that means Rami Malek's now on the A-list and going to be in a bunch of hit movies. I think it's definitely a step up for his career, though. And I think Rami Malek's been underappreciated. I was a fan of Rami Malek back when he was on the sitcom called War at Home or something. That was a sitcom I liked quite a bit. I've been a fan of this guy for years. He was also on the Pacific, the HBO miniseries. But Bohemian Rhapsody continues to be a monster hit at the box office. Vice, starring Christian Bale from Adam McKay, I'd say is becoming a bomb. This film cost $60 million, much more than The Big Short. It seems like it's going to end up somewhere a little over $40 million. I don't think the international box office is going to save this movie. Great cast: Amy Adams, Steve Carell, Sam Rockwell, Tyler Perry, Bill Pullman. Fuck yeah, Bill Pullman. But I would say this is going to lose money. And also, just the mixed reviews didn't help. Whenever you make a film about a famous politician, they don't seem to do that well. If you notice this, like when Oliver Stone made W, and just a lot of films, whenever I mean, and I don't mean like Lincoln or something, I don't mean a period piece. But whenever it's done in a modern context, I don't ever think those films do so well. I don't know. I hate to be this way. I don't know if the public cares about Dick Cheney that much anymore. I really feel like people don't. I think like we've moved on from that era. Maybe they should have waited longer. Like, if this movie came out 20 years from now, I wonder if it had done better. I don't know. Also, it's just a weird film. Adam McKay's filmmaking style over his last 2 films is very odd. The Mule is doing honestly pretty well. It's supposed to be Clint Eastwood's last film, although he said that before, although he's pretty fucking old now. $50 million budget, which seems a little high. This film, I like the trailer to it. It got very mixed reviews, but Clint Eastwood's had a great box office track record. This film will now pass 100 million. I thought it would tap out around 90, but it's definitely on track to make over 100 million. So good for Clint Eastwood. I mean, it's no Gran Torino financial success, but still, you know, 1517 to Paris didn't do well, but Sully was a big hit. American Sniper was the biggest film of 2014. Jersey Boys and J. Edgar were a bomb hereafter and all that. You know, he's had bombs. But, you know, when you look at the success of Gran Torino or, you know, $1 Million Baby or Mystic River and just throughout his career, Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's definitely one of the most successful actor-directors in Hollywood history. When you just take it all as a whole. But, yeah, the last, you know, he's been in a few movies. He was in that baseball movie a few years ago. I think Justin Timberlake was in that didn't do that well. But yeah, The Mule, you know, it shows that Clint Eastwood can still sell a movie. I think in particular to older audiences. I think he hits that market huge. I think that's his demographic. And I think it's once again paid off for him. I think a lot of people wrote this film off with its opening weekend, but it's held on and should pass $100 million. So that's about as good as you could have expected, honestly, I'd say. On the basis of sex, it's so far made $10.5 million. It's in 1,900 theaters. I think it's doing all right. I honestly think this is a pretty good performance. I think they maybe went a little too wide. Bumblebee continues to be a disappointment domestically, despite very good reviews. I still think that's a stigma from the previous Transformers films from Michael Bay, but Transformers has always made the majority of its money now from international box office, at least ever since the first one. So 256 mil foreign, which is still pretty low for a Transformers film. It's not blowing up China. Aquaman's been taking a lot of that. But 364 million worldwide on a $135 million budget. I would say if they get to that sweet spot of 450 million, that this film is definitely a break-even movie, and I don't think they're going to lose money. But domestically, this isn't a great performance. It's not going to make... I don't see how it could make 130 or 140 million, which I think would have been decent. I think the best outlook they could have hoped for here, if people really would have responded to this movie, would have been like 190 mil domestic and like 650 million worldwide, and we might have had a guaranteed sequel. At this point, I think it's debatable if we're going to get a Bumblebee sequel or not. But this is cheaper than Michael Bay's Transformers films usually are. And I think they just didn't wait long enough. I think this film should have maybe come out this year or 2020. I think they might have jumped the gun a little bit with this in between Michael Bay's Transformers. I don't think people were quite ready for a reboot. And I don't think people quite understood that that's what it was. I think a lot of people thought it was just like a prequel. So it's unfortunate because this film, you know, once again, it got good reviews. It's from a good filmmaker. It's sad it didn't do better at the box office. Mary Poppins Returns continues to have a decent enough performance, although this is a pretty steep drop, 54%, $7.2 million, $150 million. This stars Emily Blunt as the title character. Directed by Rob Marshall from Chicago fame. $130 million budget, $287 million worldwide. It looks like it's going to make, you know, $350 million. So this definitely isn't a bomb. It's not one of the biggest grossing. It's not going to be one of the highest grossing Disney live action movies to come out in recent years. This is not Beauty and the Beast. This is not The Jungle Book. You know, this is not, you know, it isn't even Cinderella, quite frankly. It's not even making that kind of money. But it's not a disaster. I did think this was going to do better. I would have thought this was going to make like 185 million and like 450 million worldwide, but it's maybe people just aren't responding to it. Everyone kept comparing it to The Greatest Showman, but it's not really it's not really doing what The Greatest Showman did. And that multiplier on The Greatest Showman's just kind of incredible. Escape Room has a pretty steep second week drop, which I thought was going to happen, although it only has a $9 million budget. So far, $32 million domestic, $34.9 million worldwide, so $35 million. So the film's doing okay, but nothing to go home, you know, to sing praises about. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the very critically acclaimed animated film, has a $9 million weekend here, 31% drop, $147 million domestic with a $90 million budget. So the film looks like it should be able to make $165 to $180 million domestic. I would say 170 is probably the sweet spot where this is going to end up here soon. It's now past $300 million worldwide. I should have a review for this film coming out sometime, possibly in the next week. So with the $90 million budget and marketing, I don't know if they've made a lot of profit yet. I certainly think this film's a success, especially after its okay opening weekend. It did well over the holidays. So, you know, if this could make 175 million and end up with like 400 and, you know, let's say like 430 million worldwide, although that's going to be pretty tough where it's at right now, this would be quite a success. But as of right now, the box office is definitely not matching the reviews, but this is a very unique animated film, and its animation style is very unique, and I don't know. I think it took a while for this film to catch on. I don't think it had the initial hype, even with the reviews. I think it kind of fell under the surface a little bit and got ignored a little bit. And I think people are playing catch up with it now, and that's why the holds have been so good, especially after it started winning some awards like the Golden Globe for Best Animated Film. But I definitely think that the hype isn't quite there, despite people seem to be loving this movie. You know, I mean, everything you read about it, everybody seems to love it, but it doesn't seem like it's showing up financially. This isn't doing like the Lego movie. You know, you think with the hype, this film would have made like 230 million domestic and 500 million worldwide, but it's not done yet. We'll have to see where it ends up. But it's not a bomb by any means. Maybe too many Spider-Man films so close together sort of maybe put people in a weird spot with it. We'll get to Mortal Engines, which I totally forgot to talk about last week. Let me see, where's Mortal Engines? I don't even think it's on here anymore. Jesus Christ. You just knew that was going to be a bomb, though. Even though I love Robert Sheehan, You just knew that Peter Jackson being involved with that, I was like, what a bad idea to make this movie. I mean, they were just hoping the international box office would bring it home. Peter Jackson's in a weird place in his career right now. I really didn't think his career would end up like this, where he's just involved with bombs and disappointments and hasn't had the success that for about a decade now. Like, he's just had one disappointment kind of after another, even though the Hobbit trilogy made like $3 billion. A Dog's Way Home. What is this? A Dog's Purpose 2? $11.3 million this weekend. Ashley Judd. Jesus Christ. Edward James Olmos. Yeah, I don't want to go see this movie on the big screen. I don't think I can deal with that acne scarring so big. Anyway, $18 million budget. Decent opening weekend. Certainly not the kind of opening weekend most of these dog-centric films make, like A Dog's Purpose. This is honestly kind of a mediocre opening weekend, all things considered. I thought this would have done a little bit better. From Charles Martin Smith, CMS. Yeah, fuck this movie. I don't want to talk about this fucking movie. Fuck it. It is weird, all these really, like, this is a weird year where a bunch of bad movies have made a lot of, like, Bohemian Rhapsody, Venom, like, these really mediocre films that, you know, and they're making, like, $800 million, or Aquaman. It's odd, like, it felt like we were kind of we were getting past that a little bit, and now we're right back into it. Yes, I agree, Peter Jackson should definitely go back to low-budget movies. 100%. You know, and Jurassic World 2 made 1.3 billion, and that movie fucking sucked. I mean, I'm not surprised. The first two How to Train Your Dragon movies were critically acclaimed. I'm not shocked that the third one's critically acclaimed too. You know, well, duh. I didn't expect it to get bad reviews. The How to Train Your Dragon franchise is very popular. I'm a fan of How to Train Your Dragon, so I'm not surprised. I don't really think anything of it, to be quite frank. Let's talk about the box office Addict film of the week, which has been a massive success over the last few weeks, from James Wan, the director of the Conjuring franchise, the man behind the Saw franchise, the man behind the Insidious franchise, and the man that directed the most successful Fast and Furious film. Now has $2 billion films under his belt, which is very rare. There's only a few directors who've ever done this, like Joss Whedon, the Russo brothers, Christopher Nolan. It's pretty much people who've directed superhero films. James Cameron. But there's not many directors who have done this. And the fact that James Wan did this in two different genres is very interesting. The fact that he did this with Furious 7, and now he's done it with Aquaman. James Wan has arrived. And quite frankly, he has already arrived, I think, for a few years now. But he's definitely arrived now. I think this puts him at the top of Hollywood directors list. I'm not talking like, oh, he's like David Fincher or Wes Anderson. I mean, like, he's going to have some power in the industry and some say. And if I was DC, if I was Warner Brothers, I would give this guy whatever the fuck he wants. I would ask him to be running my universe right now. I'd put all the chips on the table for him, because James Wan apparently just knows how to make fucking hits. I mean, there's just been one after another. I mean, James Wan has become a major director. And I think he can't be ignored anymore. I think he needs to be spoken about with like a J.J. Abrams or something like that. I mean, he's had too much success now. I think because he's been mainly working in low-budget horror films, but now the two blockbuster, big-budget films he's worked on are both billion-dollar films. Yeah, James Wan is here to stay. He's not going anywhere. He clearly understands the international audience. He just knows how to tap into what people seem to want when they go see movies in certain genre. Maybe his best skill is understanding genre and the audience that he's playing to. So let's just acknowledge that James Wan, this is a huge success for him, I think, above anyone else, because this just puts him at another level. You know, this puts him at another level of success. Yeah, I didn't think Aquaman was very good. Personally. I mean, it's okay. I'm not saying like it's a bad movie, but yeah, I think it's a very generic comic book movie with some interesting visuals. Not a bad movie though, and I'm a fan of James Wan. Let me make that clear. I like The Conjuring, and I like The Conjuring 2 even more. I like a lot of Furious 7. I don't like the Insidious films. But I don't think he's a bad filmmaker at all. And I honestly, yeah, let me just look at this. I mean, this isn't gonna make Furious 7 money just because, yeah, of course it's not, but still, you look here, 1.5 billion, 1 billion, 320, 319, 161, 103, 97. I mean, he's pretty much just been on a roll ever since he did Insidious. Ever since Insidious came out, he's just been on a winning track record with just one film after another. This is a great run at the box office, and he's done films of different genres with different budgets. He'll make a $20 million film that's a hit. He'll make a $200 million film that's a hit. Cannot be stopped. This is big for Jason Momoa from Game of Thrones. A lot of people, Blood Money in particular, has often said that he doesn't think anyone from Game of Thrones is going to have a successful career outside of the show. Now, he truly, though, when Blood Money says that, he's usually talking about the main principles. To be fair, Jason Momoa has not been on Game of Thrones really at all, except for cameos, since the first season. So I don't even know if he really counts in that. Where he's talking more about the main principal actors, like Kit Harington and all that. But Jason Momoa, this is really, a big success for him. He was one of the more popular things about Justice League. He was very well received. Now he's in this film, and it's the biggest DC film. I think it will pass Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Rises box office worldwide. Domestically, this isn't even close to the Dark Knight or Dark Knight Returns box office, especially, and Dark Knight Rises, especially with inflation. I think Dark Knight made like $650 million with inflation, so don't get me wrong, this isn't at that level. But at the international box office, this film is fucking huge. It will make over $800 million foreign. It's just one of the biggest international box office grossers in general for superhero films. But it doesn't mean it's a slouch domestically. With a $67 million opening weekend, a $287 million domestic haul is fucking terrific. It's definitely going to make more than $300 million. It should be able to make $330 million at least. It will make $1.1 or $1.2 billion worldwide. Maybe even 1.3. But I'd say 1.2 is the high end. But still, with a $200 million budget, and you consider marketing and all that, this is definitely going to make a huge net profit. This is in the same year Black Panthers made $1.3 billion. In the same year Infinity War made $2 billion. 3 comic book films all making over $1 billion at the box office. And being hits both domestically and internationally. They're not just limited. It seems like people want this type of comic book film. In the Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, Aquaman vein. People seem to be into this kind of thing. People seem to like a little bit more weird in their comic book worlds now. Where I think we thought maybe it was going in the Deadpool R-rated direction, or that it was going, like Logan. But it doesn't seem to be going that way, or we thought it was all going for Marvel's humor. I think we're finding that people really want these worlds, these new worlds to explore, and these things about royalty and family and all that stuff. Even with Wonder Woman, I think that seems to be the appeal with people right now. So maybe if they waited a few years, I think they have a good chance here to honestly reintroduce the world to Superman. I think if they wait for a while, I don't think you should make a Superman movie here for a while. But I think if you waited and you reintroduced Clark Kent and actually embraced him being a person, that he likes music. Like, wouldn't it be cool in a Superman movie to see Superman? This is really the key to making a successful Superman movie. If somebody needs to finally make a Superman movie where he's a person, where he's a real guy, and he doesn't seem like so fucking noble and boring. Like, you need a movie where Superman... In fact, as much as I think it's overrated, you need to lean more on, like, the Max Landis Superman comic that came out a couple years ago. You need to have Superman flying around, and he's got earbuds in, and he's got an iPod, and he's listening to music. You need that Superman. You need to make Clark Kent a fucking human. He's Clark Kent. He's not which, great point in that video I was talking about where Tarantino completely misunderstands Superman, or at least how he writes Bill to misunderstand Superman and Kill Bill, that No, Clark Kent is Clark Kent. Kal-El and Superman is the costume he wears. Like, I don't know how you see it any other way. That's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, that he's a mellow, cool guy. You know, instead of that one scene where he drinks beer and Superman Returns with Jimmy Olsen, like, show him go home at night and get a beer out of his fridge and sit on his couch and drink a beer. And he likes to read, and he likes music, and he has friends. He's not just obsessed with Lois Lane. He actually has friends, and he works really hard as a journalist to get articles. Actually, show him go do some journalism, and yeah, that he listens to music when he flies, and that he's a very relaxed, calm guy, and he has a sense of humor. Have him laugh about things and enjoy things, you know, and stuff like that. That would just make Superman so likable. And then when he has to be a god, he has to be a god. Show him be bored about things sometimes, and then show him, you know, and John Cusack as Superman. No, I don't mean John Cusack now because he's old, but like, yeah, the ideal Superman's like John Cusack in the 90s. You need a guy that's kind of subtly cool. He seems like he's from a small town, but he's just, you know, he's a smart enough guy. He's a cool enough guy. He has fun. He enjoys life, and he just happens to be God at the same time. And I think that would just win audiences over huge if you honestly did that. And you wouldn't have to make this big $250 million Superman movie. You could make a small Superman movie. And you don't have to have so much Superman in it. You could have the Superman moments feel great. And you could just have fun with the character. I think there's so much fun things you could do with Superman and how people perceive Superman. And nobody wants to make that movie. And it's unfortunate. But as far as Aquaman's concerned, Aquaman is here. I think he's here to stay. And he now joins Wonder Woman. So hopefully the Flash movie can have this kind of success. And then WB is on their way to competing with Marvel. So Shazam might be a success. I think it'll be. It looks like big. Yeah, no, Yu Yu Hakusho is a terrific shonen. Yes, Henry Cavill is leaving Superman, and I think they need to stay off Superman for a while. Oh, that's horrible. Of course the Academy's doing that. Oh, man, Monkey Jones got banned? Motherfuck. That's ridiculous. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Henry Cavill's gone. The thing with Kevin Hart that really made me upset was when I heard him talk to Stephen Colbert recently about not getting the job, and he said one reason he wanted to host the Oscars was all the tension now, and he wanted to relieve that. How serious everyone takes themselves at the Oscars, how serious Hollywood's taking itself, how serious the country is. He wanted to make a very light, universal, happy Oscars to relax everybody. And I think that was a great idea. It makes me like him a lot as a person. That he wanted to be like, no, I want to make I want to make people and just enjoy it as a fun, famous people get an award now, enjoyable show. I think that's really kind of beautiful that he wanted that, but yeah, Smallville's okay at the beginning. I agree with you, and it was a good idea for a show. But yeah, that's the thing. You want to see him have friends, and yeah, and call his mom on the phone and have a real conversation with her. Why can't they ever just make Clark Kent a normal person? I don't know why people make Superman so stoic. Yes, I've definitely seen Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Yes. And I did like it. Well, I don't think DC necessarily wanted rid of Henry Cavill. I think Henry Cavill just doesn't want to do it anymore. Yes, I've seen Hail Caesar. As far as I know, Henry Cavill's just like, fuck this shit, especially after Fallout did so well. I think he's like, I don't want to do this shit anymore. It's embarrassing. I mean, really, think of all the embarrassment he's had to deal with playing Superman. You honestly got to feel bad for the guy, because you watch something like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and he's very likable, and he has this fun, cheeky performance in Fallout, you know? So it's like, yeah, the guy could have a good career. He just got stuck with Zack Snyder's bullshit. It's not totally his fault. He's supposed to be mild-mannered to the point. He's not supposed to be, you know, just a block of wood. He's not supposed to just be there. I mean, he only has like what, like 43 lines in Batman v Superman. He's just, you know, Christopher Reeve did the mild-mannered thing very well. You know, Lois, I never lie. And he played Clark Kent. You know, I think Superman being humbled and kind of quaint and all that is fine. Even cute. Kind of how they play Captain America sometimes in the Marvel films. But he's never really been presented that way in the modern movies. They just make him very bland. So then he just loses all personality, and he's just what people think Superman is, which is a boring, overpowered character. And then you read something like Superman for All Seasons. Clark Kent is supposed to present himself differently from Superman. That's, I mean, to a point, but the thing is, yeah, Clark Kent, the proper way to do it would be when he's Superman, he's kind of trying to play a role, but he feels uncomfortable being Superman in a sense. He doesn't really want to be Superman, which I think Zack Snyder was trying to go for. It's just the writing wasn't there. But he has to be like, he tries to do stuff like, hey, I'm Superman, listen to me. You know, that would be very adorable. And then as Clark Kent, he's like, Jesus Christ, you know, what do I do? Like, he puts the costume on, and he has to play the role of Superman. I think that would be very fun. And I think a movie exploring that, and not being so focused on action scenes and him punching people or saving people, but actually, like, what it would be like he has the costume in his fucking closet, you know, and he puts it on, and he's looking in the mirror and like, how does this look? You know, should I have the red underwear? I think that would be a fun movie. And you know, and you know, you play around with the phone booth transformation and all that stuff. I think that would all be a really fun movie. And yeah, just that he laughs about something and all that. To a point, Clark Kent slouches and is awkward, but that's not necessarily true in every version of Superman, actually. That's not how he's really presented in the animated series. That's not how he's presented in the majority of the comic books. I think a lot of people have the perception based off the Christopher Reeve performance and certain storylines of Superman, but a lot of the time Clark Kent is actually very confident and cool. In a lot of the great Superman comic books, especially. He's honestly a very calm, cool guy, and a smart guy. It's not always that he is awkward. That awkward Clark Kent thing, which is charming, I think has been overplayed a little bit. I think we kind of need to drift away from that a little bit. I think if you want to represent Superman cinematically to people, you have to find some new things to approach with him, some nuances. To a point, Will, but there's an established character base with Superman for years now that the real person's pretty much Clark Kent. Because that's where his parents who raised him, and that's his personality. It comes from them. That's what's so great about Superman, is that he could have landed anywhere on the planet and been influenced by anyone, which is what Superman Red Son deals with, and he happened to land in this small town in Kansas and be raised by these people that taught him proper morals. That's kind of the key ingredient to Superman. That as the Earth, we were lucky that he ended up in these circumstances. So he is Clark Kent. That's really not up for debate. A writer could play with that a little bit, but Superman's never just been definitively Superman. He's always more identified with Clark Kent through the majority of the comics. Like 90-something% of them. It's very rare that he feels like he's more Superman than Clark Kent. He feels like a little bit of an outsider because it's this whole world that he doesn't know about. And I did like Zack Snyder and Nolan's pitch to make it more like The Day the Earth Stood Still, that he's an alien presenting himself to the world for the first time. And I like the interrogation scene with him and Lois Lane. I think that stuff's very good and should have been more of what they leaned on. But typically, the Superman, the man, is who he was, how he was raised, and he likes his life. He likes his parents. He goes home to his parents. He spends time with them on the farm. That's who he loves, is his mother and father. He had relationships there. He has a history there. He had a life. He had a life as a teenager and all that, and so I would say he's Clark Kent for the most part. I don't think the writer's interpretation thing's totally true, but that is true to a point that a writer could reinterpret Superman if they wanted. But for me in a movie, I really don't want that, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think the right idea would be to get people to fall in love with Clark Kent again. Just the same way people really like Steve Rogers. I think that's the key there, is how people like Steve Rogers as Captain America. I think you can do that with Superman. The way Chris Evans has made Cap so popular. I think that's what's been missing. And I think if they did that, that would make people like Superman more, and he would do better at the box office. Because I root for Superman. I want a Superman movie to do well. I want people to love Superman again. And it upsets me that he's that he's not as popular as he should be right now. Iconic, yes. But the public just doesn't seem to be embracing Superman right now, and that upsets me, because I'm a Superman fan. I have a Superman tattoo on my left arm. I mean, I love Superman. And a lot of it's just been casting choices, and the Donner films having too much impact on other people's vision. That certainly hurt Bryan Singer. Maybe the writers were influenced by Superman sucks his own cock while blasting villains' material. It would be cool to see an animated film win Best Picture. I agree. That'd be a really cool thing to see. Yeah, and just like, can we get over Lois Lane being such a focus in every Superman movie? Can we get off that a little bit? Every fucking Superman movie has so much Lois Lane in it. Can we focus on some other side characters? Can we get more Jimmy Olsen? Like, really, I'm saying, like, can we just get more of the other people around him? Can we get Brainiac in a fucking Superman movie? Can we get some new villains? They make Superman feel so limited, and he's not as limited as the movies present him as. I would like some new shit. Oh, geez, the one to definitely read is All-Star Superman. I mean, that's the Superman comic. All-Star Superman's amazing. Whatever Happened to the World, The Man of Tomorrow, Alan Moore, which is the end, I think, of Silver Age Superman. Yeah, Jimmy Olsen's dead, I know. But All-Star Superman, or Superman for All Seasons, is a very good book. Red Son's worth reading. Just don't let the politics piss you off so much. More it's runs of Superman you need to read. You gotta read runs of Superman, but I would say a lot of the stuff in the 80s is very good. I think a lot of stuff in the 90s is very bad. But a lot of the modern Superman stuff has been very good. Especially Superman's Son. A lot of the stuff the last few years has been very good with Superman. So I would say start there. After you read some of the classic books, I would read some of the stuff that's come out just in the last 5-6 years. I think is some of the best Superman books we've gotten in a while. Oh, I know Snyder killed him. I know Snyder killed Superman. Yeah, All-Star Superman's a terrific book. I don't know what Brad Bird would have done with Superman, to be honest. I mean, I have an idea in my head. Red Son's a criticism of America in a big way. Blood Money has a great rant about this, but it's, to go into it would be a whole discussion yourself. There's people who have whole discussions about this, but basically, what's cool about Red Son is that Millar is saying that Clark Kent would end up being Clark Kent, do the right thing anyway, that people would become who they are anyway. And there's this cool plot twist at the end of the book that's pretty fucking awesome. But for the majority of the book, it's very much a criticism on America, and it's making these parallels between that and communist Russia. And it's a very anti-American story. And Superman being such a American character, it's sort of like that. Because people ignore a lot of the immigrant parallels between that and Superman, that Superman is sort of like a Jewish immigrant, especially when the origins of Superman in the 30s, an alien but And I agree. Steven Spielberg at one point, he was gonna direct the Superman. He was the pick before Richard Donner, actually. Although I think Donner made probably pretty close to what Spielberg would have done in the first half of the movie. I think that feels like a Steven Spielberg movie. But the way Superman has these immigrant like parallels because of him coming and to this land that he's not from, and then finding success in it, and even the color choices, the red and the blue. I don't know when me and Blood, when you're gonna do that podcast I've been promising for a year. But yeah, would I've liked to seen a Steven Spielberg Superman film back in the day? Fuck yeah, totally, great choice. Oh yeah, I'm fine at my apartment. Oh yeah, that death scene's hilarious. It's like a living meme. I liked Ready Player One too. I thought Ready Player One, it's flawed as hell, but I thought it was a very fun movie. I think it was one of his more fun movies in the last, 10 years. It could have been amazing. Ready Player One could have been an amazing movie, but it's an okay movie. I definitely don't dislike it. I like it a lot more than some of his other films that have come out. Okay, let's talk about the #1 movie of the week. Kevin Hart, despite losing the Oscar job due to controversial jokes, which I guess is... And now comedians can't make jokes anymore. That seems where we're fucking at now. Louis C.K. has a comic set. Oh no, he's an evil. Anyway, this stars Bryan Cranston, Kevin Hart, Nicole Kidman. This is a remake of that famous French film that made like $400 million from a few years ago, that they were planning on remaking for years. I think at one point, they've had like several directors attached to this, because that other film was such a big hit. It's like on IMDb's top 250. Eventually, though, it fell into the hands of Neil Berger, a very talented filmmaker, actually. I think it's overlooked a lot, who made The Illusionist and Limitless. And the first Divergent, which isn't a very good movie, but his first few films are really good. This stars Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart, both terrific. Film's getting negative reviews. The first film very much was a very cliche melodrama, but it did seem to transcend its limits in a genre and become a very popular film. So this film, I don't know if it'll follow the same path of that, where this will just become a blockbuster like that film did. But still, with a $37.5 million budget, a $20 million roughly so opening weekend is not bad. It shows that Kevin Hart still has pull at the box office. This is one of Bryan Cranston's better openings. So we'll have to wait and see on the word of mouth with this one. If this is a big audience crowd pleaser like the original was in France, I could definitely see this film making like $80 million domestically. And, that you would have to call it a pretty decent little success. It is true. I think there is something with the CGI in Age of Ultron. I don't know what the fuck was with that. Yeah, the Jesus God metaphors are always a bad idea to lean on with Superman, I feel. I get really tired of that stuff. The Untouchable was one of the highest grossing films of 2012 before the event. Yeah, it was, yeah. It was a very successful... They talked about doing an American adaptation of it for years, though. I think Paul Feig was attached at one point. And there was a lot of big actors attached to it. I wish I could remember all the people that were behind it, but there were so many people. Oh, I guess everything could criticize everybody for doing anything now. Fuck Twitter. But yeah, good opening weekend. And I'm glad that Kevin Hart still has the public on his side. I'm probably not going to see this movie. But, at least they finally came out with it after years, and hey, good for Neil Berger. Alright, let's look at Mortal Engines. Sorry, at a weird angle with my keyboard. Alright, Mortal Engines had a $100 million budget, made $15 million domestic, and $57 million foreign, for $72 million worldwide. Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh wrote on this, the people behind the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy and King Kong and a bunch of successful movies. Heavenly Creatures, which is still my favorite Peter Jackson movie. Directed by Christian Rivers. Yeah, this is one of the biggest bombs of the year, and everybody thought it was going to be a bomb. This isn't a surprise. This is another YA movie series that isn't successful after the hits of Harry Potter and Twilight. Like the Divergent franchise, they just stopped making those films because they started to lose money. I think this whole genre, or Hunger Games, is just losing steam in general. I think that era's past. I think Peter Jackson's name doesn't pull as much weight as it did, obviously. And the marketing for this film was fucking horrible, quite frankly. So really, you know, what are you gonna do? I mean, if Peter Jackson had directed it, maybe it would have done better. But yeah, you know, you gotta look at the Lovely Bones, the Hobbit trilogy, King Kong. I don't like any of those movies. His early work, I mean, God, Dead Alive, Heavenly Creatures, The Frighteners, Forgotten Silver. Forgotten Silver is a terrific film, by the way. I mean, that stuff's all amazing. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Peter Jackson fan. But, and, you know, he made one of the most successful trilogies ever. And in total, his films have made $6.5 billion. What's that They Shall Not Grow? Is it documentary? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe he should just stick to making documentaries. Maybe that should just be the future of his career. I don't know. Or make some, like, $10 million. He was talking about making low-budget films in New Zealand again. But, yeah, a total bomb and a disaster. But really, who didn't see that coming? I mean, did people really think The Mortal Engines was going to be a surprise hit? Even if it did get good reviews? I don't think King Kong 2005 is great. I think it's fucking awful. Like, I remember being in the theater being confused. Although King Kong does look good. The special effects are great. But yeah, horrible fucking movie as far as I'm concerned. No, Jimmy. I was in the army, Jimmy. You don't understand. Run, Jimmy. The fucking slow motion shots. Oh my god. The boring as shit first hour. That's a horrible first hour. The cringe humor. The guy drop kicking a raptor at one point. I mean, I like the final stretch in New York a little bit, but yeah, everything else, wow. I don't know if Peter Jackson fucked it up because it's weird. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was really a throwback to like Ray Harryhausen and, you know, the Sinbad films and King Kong and Jason and the Argonauts. Like, especially Return of the King, you see so much of that influence in there with the spider. And they walk through. There's so much about it that is definitely Peter Jackson being influenced by those movies and doing them with modern special effects. And that's what's one of the great things. In the same way that, you know, George Lucas was influenced by the movie serials and Flash Gordon and all that. The things that Peter Jackson was influenced by is very King Kong. And he pulled it off so well in Lord of the Rings. And then I think he just dropped the ball in King Kong. Yeah, Twitter is fun reading just because of certain people's Twitter, for sure. Well, apparently it's not that famous in the UK. Didn't make that much money. I would be up for an animated Superman movie. Totally. Yeah, that's for sure. You can tell yeah, King Kong. Oh yeah, Meet the Feebles is awesome. I just miss Peter Jackson's horror elements and his sense of humor. You know, part of what makes his early work so good, in fact, why I think Fellowship of the Ring is such a good movie and the best of the trilogy, is those horror elements. Like when the ring rape looks over and they're hiding under the log and shit like that. That shit's fucking scary. It's horror movie shit. The Mines of Moria, like that stuff's amazing. I wish he leaned on that stuff more. That's where a lot of his strengths are. You know, Sam Raimi is doing that shit too, where he's just leaving his roots a lot of the time. And then you see Drag Me to Hell, and you're like, could you make like 10 of these? Will you fucking stop trying to do like Wizard of Oz and all this shit? Will you like just make a fucking Sam Raimi movie? It's like, I'm that way with Peter Jackson. Can you just make a Peter Jackson movie? Will you stop trying to recreate your success of Lord of the Rings? Will you just make a fucking horror movie or something? Or a dark comedy? Please? Like, I love The Frighteners. Frank Bannister's such a good character, and it's like a reverse Ghostbusters concept, and it feels like a Robert Zemeckis movie at points. Stranger Rings. I mean, goddamn, Peter Jackson, get your shit together. Please. I'm begging you, Peter. I loved you, Peter. What happened to you? Well, I just don't see why so many people are interested in making a $200 million movie. for these CGI spectacle films. I think it's confusing to me, honestly. Like when these talented directors and they lean into that, it's like, no, you're gonna lose a lot of your personality. You know, not everyone is like Ang Lee when he makes Life of Pi. You still feel like, oh, this is an Ang Lee film, you know? I'm very happy to see Mahler eradicate the film essay community, and he's been saying a lot of things that I've been saying for years. Oh yeah, What We Do in the Shadows is awesome. Very much feels like an Edgar Wright movie. Very good movie. Taika Waititi. I think it's held up quite a bit too. I've watched it about 3 times now, and it's really good. I'm quite the fan. I enjoyed it a lot the first time, but I think it's really held up. What We Do in the Shadows is very good. Yeah, it seemed like years ago, Peter Jackson and Raimi were like could not be touched, and now they're both in a weird place in their careers. They do tend to get a bit carried away with CGI, and you don't need to. You know, it's okay to, and I'm not anti CGI. I'm not saying that at all. I love CGI. It's just like you don't have to lean on it, man. Like less is more. It really is. You don't have to fucking lean on it. Like when Black Panther, the final fight that looks so horrible between him and Killmonger, where it's all CGI and it looks like a video game. Why didn't you just have the 2 of them in the costumes and do some choreography? It didn't have to be the actors. It could have been like 2 guys from the Raid movies. And you just let them fight in the costumes in a real location. Why did it have to be a CGI fight near a CGI train? You didn't need to do that. Why not have tension with it actually, like, being them fighting each other, like 2 guys actually punching each other and shit? What the fuck happened? Like, not everything has to be CGI. You have to mix the 2 together. Like Mission Impossible Fallout, there's CGI, but a lot of that stuff's practical, and it looks great. You mix the 2 together. Yeah, CGI Tarkin instead of just casting, like, an actor to play Tarkin, which would have been fine. You don't need to do CGI Tarkin. It's just trying to show off, like, look how good special effects are now. It's like, yeah, but it's not like... You're not really being clever with that special effect, like how Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is a clever effect. Oh yeah, no, a lot of the... No, I agree with you, the sound mixing. Pretty much the whole 3rd act of Black Panther is, like, kind of a disaster. Like, one reason I really liked, a lot, I like it a lot, Days of Future Past, is that Bryan Singer, despite there being a lot of CGI in the future scenes, most of that movie is just Wolverine hanging out at the mansion with Xavier, there's not a lot of CGI. It's not overwhelmed by special effects, so Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy and Hugh Jackman, and they all get to give real performances. And, well, yeah, that's because the Russos just for a while just did not understand set design for some reason. Like, their movies were so bland in that department, even though they're very well made. But yeah, I don't know when we got so crazy with the visuals and everything in the frame being CGI, like an animated film. I don't know what's wrong with shooting in a real location and then just using CGI to enhance the sequence. You know, to me, that's always the best. Oh yeah, no, that's a great... No, and it sounds very believable that Spielberg did that. It's a very believable... Yeah, that's the thing. Days of Future Past is grounded. If you go watch that movie, a lot of it feels like Back to the Future, the first Terminator. You know, it's not all special effects. It's a lot of fun interactions and thriller-esque moments and tension coming from character decisions, you know, that Magneto chooses to fuck them over in a good moment. Then you have moments of CGI, like the Quicksilver sequence, but the movie's not just filled with that stuff, so those moments feel more exciting. It feels more like a blockbuster from the 80s in that sense. Avatar was a bad influence. I think it was. I think people thought that was the future of movies too immediate, and we didn't ease into it. Yeah, the Quicksilver scene, like, you get those moments, but then it kind of goes back to it being a movie again, and not being all of that, not just set pieces. I mean, you could say maybe it's not viable outside of superhero movies. I think that's a good point. But superhero movies are doing so well, I don't think they're going to go anywhere. I mean, Aquaman just made $1 billion, and it's definitely a special effects demo reel. I'm very upset, though, to hear about Mumkey and the Ralph retort. That's insane. And it's not shocking. Fuck YouTube censorship. What do you want me to say? Oh, yeah, pre-hiatus box office added podcast. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge Days of Future Past fan. Infinity War is really good. I mean, I like Infinity War, and I like Winter Soldier quite a bit. I think the Russos are very good. And a lot of things that they weren't very good at with those films visually, they kind of seem to have smoothed out with Infinity War. I think Infinity War is just a much better looking movie. And the fact that it has so much color and surrealism in sequences and stuff like that is very impressive. That there's actually like fantasy sequences and time bending stuff and a warping of reality and your perception of it and all that. I really give them a lot of credit for leaning into that stuff. Good on them. And not just sticking to their gritty style, which worked pretty well for Winter Soldier, but I don't think it would have been good if they would have kept going down that road. Well, yeah, Mumkey has such a huge fan base, but I mean, I still want to watch Mumkey's YouTube videos. Like, yeah, of course Mumkey can go somewhere else, but yeah, I still want Mumkey to upload fucking videos on YouTube and to watch them. I mean, it's bullshit. He earned that audience, you know? He shouldn't have to run off and have his audience follow him somewhere. Well, the Russos are done after Infinity War, after Endgame, I mean, so, they're, you know, I think they're going to leave on, you know, if David Yates would have left at Deathly Hallows Part 2, we'd all be like, hey, good for David Yates, you know, but David Yates just couldn't, they couldn't let him go. And hopefully that won't happen with the Russos. I think the best thing for them to be would to move, like, you know, look at Phil Lord and Chris Miller, you know, the Solo thing happened, but then they were behind Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That was their baby, and look how successful that's been. So they're not done, and they've written and produced on the Lego sequel coming out. So, you know, you can always bounce back. Sometimes it's good to just move on to another project, and not just keep draining yourself of whatever creative energy you have for that universe. And I think the Russos, if they can leave with Endgame being very successful, hopefully it doesn't, you know, end up being a disaster. They have a bright future ahead of them of doing different things, and they're already going to sign up for all kinds of TV projects and stuff like that. I agree. I think the Russos can. The commentary for that, Blood Money told me about it, but you guys did too. The commentary for Infinity War is incredible, where they're talking with the writers about the script for that movie and everything. Man, it's like, oh shit, these guys really get it. They really get it. They're very talented. Yeah, I kind of quit listening to the Ralph retort too. I'm kind of sick of just the political side of YouTube in general. I don't really give a shit anymore. I just don't really have interest in it like I used to. I think that fad's kind of like less fun. I'd rather talk about other things. The Snyder Cut movement, I mean, I don't know. It's falling on deaf ears. I mean, it's what always happens. Fanboys of a filmmaker don't get the thing that they want, and then they think if they get the full version of something, it would make them happier. And it's probably not a grass is greener other situation. And, you know, I don't know. I don't think much of them at all. They want to see all the stuff that was shot. I don't even think there is the Snyder Cut fully. I think it would cost too much money for Warner Brothers, and at this point, why release it after the success of Aquaman? I think it's best to pretend that Zack Snyder never happened. And I think that's where Warner Brothers is going to. You know, I think that's where they're gonna go. It's like, James Wan and Patty Jenkins. You know, and trying to hire other filmmakers and all that, and kind of just leave Zack behind. I know that commentary for Watchmen Ultimate Cut is fucking hilarious. Yeah, Ralph Retort's only good when he has a good guest. That's really my thing about it, you know? whenever somebody really fun comes on and debates someone else. But I don't really think Ralph himself's that interesting at all. And I don't think the format of the show was even that great. I just think he got lucky that, you know, Jim would come on or someone else, or like Naked Ape would come on occasionally and it would be fun. The Snyder cut. Schneider. Yeah, fuck, I don't know. I'm so over talking about Zack Snyder. I feel like everyone's made so many videos criticizing Zack Snyder for like a decade now. I think it's all time for us to fucking move on. You know, let the guy go mourn his daughter in peace, and hopefully he'll make some independent movie that costs like $10 million and it'll be decent. Or he'll become a television director. You know, maybe he can go direct an episode of Watchmen for Damon Lindelof. You know, maybe that could happen. But I think it's time we just kind of move on from Snyder. I don't know if they're playing all of his films, but there is an art house theater render that has played some of his films. I'm a big fan of Charlie Kaufman, although I'm not a fan of Schenectady, New York, or Anomalisa, even though I like parts of them. But huge fan, of course, of Being John Malkovich, one of my favorite movies. Adaptation, I maybe love even more. Eternal Sunshine, I used to love that much, but I kind of feel a little mixed on it the last couple years. Had a conversation with Blood Money about it, kind of made me open my eyes to some things about it. He had a great quote. He said that it's a movie that holds up to repeat viewings, but it also doesn't, because it makes you see some of the obvious things in the writing with the themes. But still, really, really great little movie, and I love his screenplay for, is it A Dangerous Mind? Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, the George Clooney movie with Sam Rockwell. Awesome movie. So yeah, big Charlie Kaufman fan. Ned and Stacy, I think the sitcom he worked on. I just haven't been a fan of his last few movies, his last like 2 or 3. But yeah, Charlie Kaufman's amazing. You know, and he's written at least 2 of my favorite movies of all time, so that says something. But now I'm starting to think a lot of that had to do with Spike Jonze' adaptation of the screenplays, because I also love Her, which was all Spike Jonze. So a lot of that's Spike Jonze as well, who I think's brilliant. I actually think Zack Snyder could make good animated films. I really liked that Owl movie he made, Guardians of the Cold. I might go see Broly, I don't know. But I think Zack Snyder is a good animation director, and I really think that Owl movie is actually really entertaining. And I would like to see him do more animated films. I think that might be where he belongs as a filmmaker, because most of his films just look like cartoons anyway. So why not just be, why not work on the storyboards for animated films? Yeah, I've seen Eternal Sunshine like so many fucking times. I can just like recite every line from that movie. But Being John Malkovich really stays with me, that and Adaptation. I think those are both terrific. Very, very original. And I think the origin of a lot of Charlie Kaufman's writing style, I think you see, if you want to go to a proto-Kaufman, I've always said Barton Fink from the Coen brothers feels very much like a Charlie Kaufman film. In particular, it shares a lot with Adaptation, and I know Charlie Kaufman's talked about it being an influence. And Barton Fink's a terrific movie. In fact, though, I think the Coen brothers have been just a major influence on a lot of filmmakers in the 90s. I think Blood Simple is such an important film in the same way Evil Dead's important. And I don't think we'd have a lot of the independent movement or Tarantino's and all that if it wasn't for the Coen brothers. But I think Barton Fink really was ahead of its time. And I think that's kind of, yeah, proto-Charlie Kaufman's the only way I could describe it. Love John Malkovich, he's a great actor. Oh, Broly's no Bardock, but he's entertaining. Alright, well, I'm going to get off here. I got some stuff I got to do, and this episode's been gone on long enough. So, as always, if you watch Box Office Addict, you're probably an addict yourself. And I'm not here to help you with your addictions. I'm here to encourage them. I'll see you guys for episode 70, which we might do something special for. I don't fucking know. I'm just glad the show's back. And I hope you all have a good time 69ing each other tonight.